Hello everybody, hello DDD Run community. Today we are here with Jeremy Chassagne. It's an honor for us hosting him. He will talk for us about CQRS event sourcing and functional event sourcing. Thank you, Suat, hosting us today and recording this video. So Jeremy, how are you?
Really fine. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Could you present yourself, Jeremy?
Yes, so I'm Jeremy Chassagne. I'm working at a company called DH, a French company which is part of Accor Hotel, and who is doing some computing and programming for hostel industry. And we work between the hotels and all the distribution channels. And I'm an architect there for the last 10 years, so I have some background in that. And I've been working around and on event sourcing for the last 10 years, trying to teach it, understanding it better, and refine the concepts over the years to be able to explain it more easily to people who are interested in that.
Very well. Thank you. So the aim is we ask the community to send us their questions about CQRS and event sourcing. So some of the members of the community send us their questions, and so this video will be based on their questions. So Jeremy, could you tell us about CQRS and event sourcing? What are them?
Yeah. So this is a technique that emerged from prior knowledge about something like 10 years ago. And in the .NET ecosystem, there were some new concepts coming in, like using logs and all that. And Greg Young will also participate at some point, was talking about his way to actually record the events that happen instead of storing the current state of the system. And it raised a lot of questions that he started to formalize, and the community took it, and it was at the same time the beginning of domain-driven design, which fitted quite nicely together. And during this time, some question occurred about how you manage current state when you actually just store events. And there was a lot of question about scalability and all that around the domain-driven design and event sourcing mailing list. And we needed a word for this concept where we write and we read and we have different models for both. And this is where CQRS emerged. So the term is 10 years old just last August. So it's something that exists for 10 years today, which is an interesting concept that can be used in a lot of places. Yeah. So I can show what it means.
Yeah, sure.
And for that, the first thing is to maybe the simplest of both is CQRS, and CQRS can be used outside of event sourcing and outside of domain-driven design. But the idea is this one, is that usually we design systems in a way to make transaction easier, because having duplication of data is hard to manage. And so we use usually a normal form or something like that in a database, or documents that contains the data for the transactional part when it changes. But the problem is that there are usually in most systems few transactions to change the actual data compared to the number of reads, queries, views. And we finish by doing a lot of work on each query, complex work, which usually interact in a bad way with the transaction when they happen. That leads to a lot of nightmare about scaling, about organizing the code and maintainability. So CQRS, which means Command on Query Responsibility Segregation, is a way to just split writes from reads. So the idea is that we start with commands, so which are requests to change the system, until we formalize them. And we have a write model which has been designed only to take transactions. So it can either be in usual architectures like having a SQL database or something like that, which is ready to take the transaction. And so we will apply the commands to the right model. The right model will change. And based on that, we will have a read model or multiple read models that will be synchronized in some way to make another view on the same data, but for query purpose. So after that, we have queries that will be done against the read model. The idea is that queries never change the state of the system, so they don't produce side effects. So the read model are here just to handle the query and answer the queries as fast as possible. So it's possible to have different models for different queries, even if it's possible to have different database types like Node.js for graph queries, not for 4J. N4J, I don't know, Neo4j or something
yes,
like that.
Neo4j,
for,
yes.
For graph queries, or have a cube for analytics, or have a stream database for other purpose, a SQL database, the document database. Everything is possible as long as the data is here. But when a change happens, the change will happen in the right model and then be reflected in the other model. So the other model should be rebuildable from the original data. And the queries will be fast and easy, and the right model doesn't have to care about the shape of the queries. So here, something that is interesting is that we can scale both independently. Like if you have only a few comments on many queries, it's easy to scale this part by replicating all this data and having just a few servers for that. And for some domains, sometimes you have more writes than reads, and it's possible to do the reverse, scale this massively, and just have a few computers for that. And so you don't get the usual nightmares that comes from having to scale both when you start to reach a limit. So of course it's interesting in systems that have scaling problems mostly, but it's also quite relaxing in the way to work because the models are different, so they can be optimized for the task.
Could you please give us some examples where we need to scale read model and another example for a system that we need also to read to scale write model?
So for the read models, most systems like I was thinking about movie, theater, websites, the content change one or twice per week. But they have millions of reads, so preparing things up front is better than having to get the data each time. And the other way, it's like when you have things like counters or things like that you want to display, but that change quickly. So you have a lot of action, you want to show the count of action on the website. A very bad way to do it is to make a select star sum on each call. And if you can, on each call, just increment a counter, you can just display the counter. This is the kind of heuristic we have. So it's always valuable to have that. But we can still have all the individual hits in the database, but still we will also update a counter for each one. And if the counter is off, we can just get rid of it, make the sum, write it, and start from there. So the value is duplicated, but you can rebuild it. So it's not really a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Because the original data is the full list, but the view is the aggregated count. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And where is the database here in this schema?
So, yeah. Usually, you don't need a database to do CQRS. You can keep everything in memory. If your system doesn't have to recover from failure, it can be okay if you have short-lived things. But usually what we do is here, we have a database for the right model, which is centered around transactionality questions, like things happen or not, okay? And here we will have other databases, but it can be whatever you want, document store, hypercubes, or things like that, graph database, whatever, just so to be able to have fast queries, okay? We talk about polyglot database. Use what you need. Some databases are better for some kind of queries and others for different kind. And here the synchronization can be either just things like scripts like EDL, DTL or things like
Yes.
that to replicate the data in a different shape. It can be Hadoop code inside the database or outside the database, but mostly what you can use when you have scaling problems is to make this synchronization asynchronous. So the decision is taken, but the view will be maybe a bit later. Do that only if scaling is needed. If you don't have this problem, don't introduce it too soon. But here you can use events to synchronize. So you know what happened here, and you just reflect the effect of that on your different view models to be able to scale. And here, this becomes not too difficult to make it asynchronous, which is a good property for scaling. It will not make things simple, but when you are at this point, things are usually not simple anymore. So it will make it a bit simpler.
What kind of database do you talked about different kind of databases that we can use in Read model,
Yeah.
but you didn't talk about the kind of database that we can use for Write model. What do you propose?
For Write model, a SQL database is totally fine.
Okay.
The thing is that when you have a SQL database, you will often write your code in a way that where you do twice the work of at the same time changing and writing and doing kind of difference or something to actually produce events for the outside. And something that happens often in this case is that the event don't reflect the actual change you did in your model here. And so you have kind of double code for that. It's also totally possible to use, when you do that, document database, which is totally fine. But once you start to use events and get used to events seriously, you can use an event store and use event sourcing to implement this part, which I will explain just after.
Okay, perfect. So imagine that I have two databases, one for Read model and one for Write model.
Yes.
Does it mean that I'm doing CQRS?
Yeah, if you do that, and if you can rebuild your Read model database from your original database, you're doing CQRS. You're splitting reads and writes at the architectural level, so it's basically CQRS, yes. After that, yes, they are more efficient or less efficient, more operational intensive or not way to do it. But yeah, it's the CQRS. Doing just a view, here you have a table and here there is a view on the table, can already be considered CQRS because here the table will be normalized for transaction and the view will be optimized for queries. And it will maybe not scale that far, but SQL database today are quite good, so it's okay. And the model will be different.
So in your last example, we have our Read model and the Write model in the same database.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes. You don't have to split the database. You have to split the models.
Very well.
So since the models are different, you can use the same infrastructure or not, because you can do more different than what you can do within the single database. But whatever. The idea is mainly that the model here is different from the model here. This is why it's called a model here.
So you talked about events, event source. How about event sourcing?
Yeah. So event sourcing has been a lot described as being a way to store differently the system and all that. But primarily, it's about taking time passing in the system seriously. So usually in a system, when you look at what happened, you have almost no defined place in the system to know that. So there are methods and objects, there are logs or things like that mark point in time, but there is no primary domain concept that talk about time. And the thing is that in most of the business system we use, time passing is one of the most important points. When you listen to domain experts and all that, they talk about what happens when this thing happened before, and this is where the domain is actually more than in objects and values. We'll have to understand the meaning of values and objects anyway, But the difficulty of the domain is more about its sequencing in time. And with event sourcing, what we do is that we say, okay, we will take it literally, we will talk about that, and we will deal with that. And what we do in most systems is this. We have a method on an object, someone call it, and by doing it, the caller is actually trying to ask for change. Okay? And what we do inside is that we decide some things. Can we do it or not? What we do. And from that, we also, during this process, we also mutate our state to be able to remind what has to change. And we do this change internally. And once it's done, it's done. So to know what actually happened inside a system like that, usually what we do is that we add some log. So we produce an effect in log to see what happened. But the log are always partial, because most of the time we don't put all the data, or we put all the input data but not the intermediate result of decision we took. And often we have to add more logs and more logs to know what is exactly happening in the system. Something hard also is that we decide, but during deciding we also change things. And it starts to get messy because we take intermediate decisions and all that. And at the end, when we look at this code, knowing where is the time, what we talk about when we talk about time, in the system, there is no way to look at it and to see it efficiently. So the decision with event sourcing is first to decouple in the code very precisely, taking decision and applying them. So the idea is this one. The first is what I mean when I say take a decision. To decide, we need globally two things. The first thing is we are asked to do something. This is a command. So a command has usually a type which says which type of command we want, and some values that are parameters for this action. So usually we represent it with the data structure, which has a type which is the actual command, do this or do that, which are different, and inside the values and the parameters. But this is not enough, because if we want to be serious about that, we will try to make a pure function here. A pure function is a function that depends only on its input parameter, and for any value parameter will output always the same result. So if I do only that, for the same command, I will always take the same decision, which is not true, because usually what's happened is that it depends on what's happened before. And for that, we will also input in this function the current state. This is not very usual to do things this way, because here the state will also be a value. So think about your usual private fields as taking their value today, putting them in a structure that is immutable, that you cannot change, and pass them to the function. Okay? So this is your state, just the values you care about, that you need to take the decision based on what happened before. You take this state and this command, you should have everything you need to take your decision. I will talk about some of the small just after that, but the idea is here. So we have the command and the state, and based on that we take our decision, and the decision will be only to return events. So we have an event list that says this is what happened when you ask me to do that, and I'm in that state. So this function is easy. You ask me to do this action when I'm in this state, this is what happens. That's all. Always, and for the same input, it will always give the same output, and it is always returning a result. So this is really easy to test, because it depends on nothing outside. It's quite easy to write, and the thing is that it doesn't produce any other effects that returning these events. It's not writing anything in the database, anything like that. It's just returning the list. But here we have a clean way to know when we want to do something, the decision we take, and it's really easy to write some code around this function. It's just a basic function that takes two parameters and returns the list. It's all static and all that. But after that, of course, we'll need to evolve the system to change, because when something happens, it changes. So we have another function, which is the evolution function, and we will call it evolve. And this function will have a slightly different input. It will be fed with what just happened, an event, and the current state. So for now, I will just make state here. So we have state here and here, but I will connect the dots. This function say, when I'm in this state and this happens, here is my new state. So we take a structure, another structure, and return a structure. Of course, here we have a list, so we will have to repeat this operation for each event out from the list, but the idea is here. And once we have our new state, this new state will be used for the next decision, and this new state will be used for the next evolution. That's all. Event sourcing is just splitting your domain code as a decide function with the signature comments on the state that returns an event list, and the evolution function that takes an event and a state and return the new state. That's all.
Do you have any example in some business domain with a decision function and evolution function?
Yeah. For instance, I often use my example. So this will be the main example in the book I'm working on. We can talk about that later.
Sure.
But the idea is that it's about the Crazy 8 game. So it's a card game like Uno, where we play with the cards and all that.
Have to have this. No, I was translating to...
Yes.
Yeah.
The idea is that the decision function is taking the current state, like what is the top card, what is the direction of the game, because we can change the game direction, how many players there are, to know which player has to play the next turn. And the commands are play card and just that. And the decision function will take the state of the game and the card that is played, who's the player that is playing. If it's not the right player that is playing, we can say, hey, no, it's not your turn. When the card is not, when the player cannot play this card on the game, we can say, no, it's not the right card. But it depends on what's happening before. So it depends on the direction, it depends on the type of card and all that. And then we will output events that says either card played and with what effect, because some cards can be played as just jumping to the next player or changing the direction and all that. And the game, this decision is taken in the decide function. And the evolution is just taking the event to put the state in the right state for taking the next decision.